So this is a very interesting topic, and actually, if you look ahead and you look at the livelihood of both games, I know that there's a lot of animosity between Melee and Smash 4, especially when you get to online communities. In person, it's actually not that bad. But if we're to look in the long-term aspects of both games, and if we're to really look and see, like, what is the best way to grow our communities 2 to 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line, I just want to make this point that Smash 4 and Melee actually do need each other. And I'll explain why. From a Melee perspective, obviously this is going to sound very greedy and very self-absorbed, but I'll explain why both games do. So I'll start with why Melee needs Smash 4. So, little known fact is that a lot of Brawl players, a lot of PM players, actually, a lot of Melee players now have come from Brawl and PM. And actually, newer Smash games are actually a great funnel for people to go into Melee. Jogo Guy actually was going to start mostly in Brawl, but he actually moved into Melee as time went on. And so he's one of the examples of a figurehead that's in Melee that has done a lot of work coming from a newer game. So first and foremost, having hundreds of thousands of eyes on Smash 4 in turn is an advertisement for Melee too. So let's say Smash 4 tournament, there's a day 3 of a Smash National where it goes Smash 4 top 8 and then Melee top 8. If Smash 4 top 8 does well, it carries over to Melee top 8. And you get a lot more eyes focusing on Melee. And so the reality is, the Smash 4 is actually a really great funnel for players to get into Melee. So if people are a little bit intimidated, then they learn Smash 4, and they go like, oh, okay, Melee is at this tournament too, I want to enter that. So it's actually one of our greatest people funnels into Melee. And so if you alienate that audience and separate them from us, then we lose a lot of potential new players for Melee. And Brawl and PM and all these other Smash games have been a positive gateway into Smash Melee. And a lot of these people, if we were, much worse as a community, may have never actually been interested in Melee at all. And so, if you want to continue the growth in the viewership of Melee, we also need to support Smash 4. The logistics are very similar. And by having Melee and Smash 4 in the same venue, you have the opportunity to run top 8s at Genesis, whereas if it was just a Melee-only tournament, I highly doubt they would have been able to afford a lavish Day 3 venue for Genesis. It would have been something a lot less prettier if we weren't able to combine our forces. So when you combine venue fees, although you have to allocate resources to 2 games, with the help of Gaming Gen providing setups, when you can combine venue fees, you can get nicer venues. You can afford to get more things because you can save on costs. Now for Smash 4, or actually another point to make is that inevitably Nintendo would probably not support Melee at all if it's not for Smash 4. So hopefully one day Nintendo does something cool with the esports scene. I still think they're learning, but if we were to detach ourselves from Smash 4, in turn we lose Nintendo in the long term. So it's not a very wise strategy for Melee to really separate themselves. Now for Smash 4, why they would need Melee. So Melee people will also transfer over to Smash 4. And if a Melee Grand Finals does really well or creates a lot of hype, they might in turn watch Smash 4 right before or after. So by connecting the communities, if you can have like 100k for a Smash Melee top 8, or wait for that, they'll be watching Smash 4 along the way. And that promotes the game, it gets more eyes viewing it. And maybe there's some animosity, and I know there are people that hate the game, and they will go on these diatribes about like why Smash 4 sucks. But in turn, that's not everybody, and you'll have the innocent, neutral bystander who is into esports, that's into Melee, but might also want to watch Smash 4. And so that's important too. And this might put people on blast, so I apologize if this is taken the wrong way, but frankly, a lot of the large non-Evo Smash tournaments are run by Melee figureheads, or due to the influence that Melee has, allows for Smash 4 to latch on. So, I have yet to really see people who have been homegrown from Smash 4 to really create a tournament that would be able to accommodate 2,000 people. Maybe one day that happens. I view the Smash 4 community as a lot younger and not as mature in that. Although there are certain regions where they're doing pretty well for tournaments, to get to the national level productions of a Pound or Super Smash Con or a Genesis, they can latch on to the event coordinators and the people that book the venues and bring their game in. And so that's where the union is important for Smash 4, because if Genesis, Super Smash Con, I guess Super Smash Con ran both, so I won't count that, but Big House, Genesis, and Pound, all those players are mostly from Melee or interested in Melee, and by keeping the relationships tight, then the Smash 4 has access to those venues and to those brands as well. And so overall, I think it's important for both communities to stay bonded. I'm not going to advocate one unit because I think that has a lot of cringy terms. Unfortunately, this doesn't include Project M. I know that I would love to support Project M, but due to all the legality or whatever, I wish the best for them, and I hope that in tournaments that use Hitbox or something that they get supported. But the TLDR of this is that it is beneficial for Smash 4 and Melee, the communities, for the tournaments to really work together, because there's a lot more resources that can be provided when both combine as opposed to if they're both separated, and that's the main point of this video.